saying it takes DNA to be a father, but you can continue to be that if that's what you want.
That's my son, man.
Yes, it is.
I don't want to deal with her for 14 more years. She harasses us on the phone. She calls us. She calls us all the time.
I thought you burst out a tear for this baby because now she finally knows who her father is.
Because he's so understanding, and if it were me in his position, I wouldn't have stayed.
You don't know how hard it is. I have bad dreams at night because of it. I wake up every morning to look at yours and Sophia's face, and y'all are what keep me going.
Ms. Ritchell is spoiled for choice. One man signed the birth certificate of her daughter Jasmine, and another has been paying child support. She's in court today to determine who the real father of her daughter is. Mr. Harris, the man who was paying child support for Jasmine, is also in court with his wife, and he's furious that he spent 2 months in jail for $6,000 in delinquent child support payments. He's also in court to get the whole matter cleared and determine if he's Jasmine's father or not.
He had said that we could be together, so therefore he had me thinking we were together, but
it was just a hookup, that's all it was.
All right, so Mr. Harris, you claim this was not a relationship.
It's not.
But you do admit to having a sexual relationship with Miss Rochelle.
I do.
This is how it almost always starts, isn't it? A man and a woman get into a relationship and aren't clear about the goals of that relationship, and then they have a kid and no one knows what to do. Anyway, when Miss Ritchell found out she was pregnant, she didn't contact Mr. Harris. Instead, she contacted the other man who she was sleeping with.
Did this other man sign the birth certificate when the baby was born?
yes, he did.
Oh, Jerome, let me see that. So this other man was with you through the pregnancy?
Yes, he was.
And he was there at the birth too?
Yes, Your Honor.
And signed the birth certificate?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so were you hoping here Mr. Harris was the father?
I was actually hoping that the other guy was.
Mr. Harris doesn't agree with this at all. He says he lived opposite Miss Ritchell and he saw many other men entering and exiting her house. Of course, this doesn't mean she slept with them. She might just know a lot of guys. The issue now is, how did Mr. Harris end up being the child support guy when Ms. Ritchell herself says she knew he wouldn't be there for her?
That's how it happened. I missed my DNA appointment. I rescheduled it because I didn't have a way to get there. So I had another appointment, but I didn't make that one also. So they just deemed me as the father without actually having
yeah,
DNA.
you were named the father by default because
Yes.
you failed to show up for your DNA test.
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, that doesn't seem fair, but it didn't end there. After he was deemed as the father by default, Mr. Harris was also hauled into jail for missing child support payments.
And said that I owe like $6,000 back in child support. So I guess I owe for over a couple of years or so, I guess. And
Jasmine is 4.
yeah, she's 4.
So you got arrested and you spent how long in jail?
2.5 months. I was a month and a half in Georgia. Then they moved me from Georgia to a hold in Kentucky.
Ms. Ritchell doesn't come off great here at all. And if the DNA test proves that Mr. Harris isn't the father, he would have spent 2.5 months in prison for nothing. Now, what does Ms. Ritchell have to say about this?
Ms. Rochelle, is it a possibility that he's not the biological father? You yourself let someone else sign the birth certificate.
For one, there was not a lot of people going in and out of my house.
But you did admit that there was one other guy because that's the person that you let accompany you through the pregnancy.
It was the other guy and him. That's it. There's no one else.
Your Honor, when she first started contacting me on his phone.
However, Mrs. Harris has a different story to tell. She says that last year when Ms. Ritchell contacted her, she told her that there were 3 possible fathers for Jasmine and Mr. Harris was just one of them. But today in court, Ms. Ritchell denied that conversation ever happened.
There's a third guy.
There is only 2.
Did you tell her 3?
No, I did not.
Yes, Your Honor.
So this conversation didn't happen?
No, it didn't.
Yes, Your Honor, it did.
So,
I have no reason to
Mr.
sit
Harris,
here.
have you developed a relationship with Jasmine at all?
No, I've only seen the child maybe once, and that's when I. That's when I was living actually in the state of Kentucky.
Mr. Harris has only seen Jasmine once, and Ms. Ritchell doesn't seem bothered about this. Why? Well, that's because the other potential father is already taking care of the child physically, and she just needs child support payments from Mr. Harris. That way, she enjoys the benefits of having 2 men father her child. One man to pay the child support payments, and one man to be physically there for her. That sounds extremely cruel to both men, but let's see what the DNA results say.
Mr. Harris, you are the father.
I don't want to deal with her for 14 more years.
Jerome, get me my violin so
sorry.
I can play a tune to this. You have a beautiful little girl. It's time for you to step up to the plate. Do you understand?
Mr. Fisher says he made the biggest mistake of his life just 2 months ago when he signed the birth certificate of 2-month-old Sophia. Why would anyone ever say something so cruel about such a cute baby? It turns out his fiance told him a month ago that he may not actually be her father. Ms. Doyle says she also made the biggest mistake of her life when she cheated on Mr. Fisher. She's in court today hoping and praying that he is her father and hopes the relationship can continue after today.
I love Brittany and I love Sophia to death. They're my world, but she lied to me. She kept the truth from me and it kills me. I hope I am Sophia's father. I love her to death. That's my baby.
So you say you love her.
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you tell me what you feel?
Sorrow, pain, everything. It all hurts bad.
Because for the first month of this baby's life,
This is so painful. Mr. Fisher was in bliss for that first month of knowing Sophia. He treated her like his child and wanted to be there for her in every way. But once Ms. Doyle broke the news that he may not be the baby's father, his heart was shattered into 10,000 pieces.
I think that he is the father. I know 100%. I mean, he was there through the whole pregnancy and he does everything for me. He works, he supports our family, he runs my baths, he cooks my food, he cleans our house. He rubs my back and rubs my feet. He's a great father.
And yet, she decided to cheat on him and throw him into this situation. It's really hard to imagine a more cruel thing, especially from someone you love as much as Mr. Fisher loves Ms. Doyle.
She's beautiful. Her eyes, amazing. Her body, she's gorgeous. And she treats me like a man wanted to be treated, all the way up until this happened.
and so you decide to settle down.
Yes.
And you had this beautiful relationship. It felt perfect to you.
Everything I've ever wanted.
And then, Miss Doyle, how do we end up here? What happened?
One of his family members, I was on vacation.
You can clearly see that Mr. Fisher thought he was living the perfect life. He had a perfect woman who loved him perfectly, and he wanted to settle down, have a child, and make her his wife. They'd even gotten engaged and everything. The only question is, how did we end up here?
He was with at the time had texted me, and he said, Trey's cheating on you, which we call him Trey, but his name is John. So me, I was hurt. And so I went to be by myself at the pool area where I was at the time. And a guy walked up to me and he's like, well, you look like you need somebody to talk to. Do you want to go to my camper and talk? So I go back to his camper with him.
Pro tip, ladies and gents. If you're on vacation and you have a partner, please do not talk to other people who might want to sleep with you. And if you do, don't follow them back to their room. And if you do,
He kissed me and then we had sex.
don't do that. And even if you do that, try to use protection. Ms. Doyle here didn't use protection, and that's why she's right here in paternity court. The horrible thing about this case is that Mr. Fisher didn't cheat on Ms. Doyle.
So the family member sent a text and lied.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you went and had revenge sex.
Yes, Your
And the
Honor.
whole time it was a lie?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Fisher, as you stand here, I can see how difficult it is to hear your fiance describe the night she had sex with another person.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, and Mr. Fisher never learned about Ms. Doyle cheating on him until after Sophia was born.
Whenever I took the pregnancy test, I knew that I had cheated on him. So whenever I seen the lines, I was kind of upset. I was like, well, this isn't happening, you know? Because I knew that he didn't. He didn't know that I had cheated on him. And I just couldn't find it in myself to tell him because he was so excited I didn't want to hurt him, you know?
It's hard to quantify just how much pain Mr. Fisher is feeling right now. We can only hope that the DNA test comes back with good news and he is the father of Sophia. Let's see what the test says.
Mr. Fisher, you are the father. Oh. You can stand there with him if you'd like.
I think we're gonna go get married when we get back home.
Mr. Woody is in court today only to learn one thing: if he is the biological father of Ms. Wilson's son. He was initially sure he was the father. In fact, he was so sure that he named the child Michael Woody Jr. However, Ms. Wilson says she slept with another man during the time of conception, and as such, she cannot be honestly sure who the father of Woody Jr. is.
Well, So I have a 3-year-old daughter already, so when I found out I was having a son, I was excited because what man doesn't want to have a junior, you know? So I got plans made, you know, I'm ready to go play baseball and basketball with them and, you know, all the stuff a father's supposed to do with his son. So I'm just ready, so I'm ready to be a father to a boy now.
The fact that Mr. Woody isn't in a relationship with Ms. Wilson lets him know that there is a strong possibility that he might not be the boy's father.
Got you all here today.
When I met Mr. Woody, I was walking down the street with my friend. We were drunk and we were going up to the store, and he was in an apartment complex holding, you know, with his daughter in a stroller, and he said, "You're cute." And I was like, "Oh, you cute too." So we walked to the store and we walked back to my friend's house. We had intercourse.
Okay, so I have to ask you this. Was he the only man you were intimate with during that time?
No, Your Honor.
Ah, that doesn't sound great at all. Ms. Wilson says there was just one other man she was intimate with during that period, and either of them could be little Woody's dad. When Ms. Wilson found out she was pregnant, she sent a message to Mr. Woody immediately. However, the girl that Mr. Woody was dating at the time was the one responding, not him.
The girl that I was dating was responding to the messages that she was sending me.
Jerome, let me see that. What evidence is this you're presenting?
I have a couple of pieces of evidence, and I got the picture of me and my son, and I have the messages from Facebook.
So this is a message from Davina Wilson. I'm pregnant, so I hope you know we're getting a DNA test when the baby's born, and I'm hitting you up with this child support. I'll see you in court.
After this, Mr. Woody came back into town to play his part because he knew he could be the baby's potential father. He went to ultrasounds with her, went to her doctor's appointments and everything, and was there for her. He was even there when the baby was born and cut the umbilical cord. Interestingly, Ms. Wilson didn't send this message to the other guy who could be the baby's father.
So why did you just single out Mr. Woody if there was another guy?
While I was sleeping with Mr. Woody, I had sex with my boyfriend and everything. He was the last person I initially had intercourse with. So the last time I had intercourse, it was with Mr. Woody.
Well, if they were both in the window of conception, why did Ms. Wilson not tell the other guy that she could be having his baby? The question now is, when did Mr. Woody start having doubts since he did all of this for the baby?
Her sister, you know, I'm at one of my friends' wakes. You know, he had just passed away, so you know, we at the wake or whatever, and I see her sister. I'm good friends with her son's father, so you know, we start talking and whoop, and she comes up to me like, "Mike, I think you should go get a DNA test." You know.
That's not the only reason Mr. Woody's doubts are back. He also says someone told him that Ms. Wilson was pregnant by another man. It's time to see what the DNA test says about all of this.
Mr. Woody, you are not his father.
What?
You okay? I know.
Ms. Bailey is in court today with her mother, and she's here to argue that her 4-month-old child belongs to her estranged husband, Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker, on the other hand, says he cannot be the father of 4-month-old Zachariah, and suggests that Ms. Bailey and her mother hit the streets to find out the real father of the baby.
Your Honor, I've come here today because Mr. Parker has done nothing, not a single thing for my daughter or my grandson. He left her when she was 16 weeks pregnant, didn't look back, and he is living his life without responsibility. I'm the baby's father. I provide for the baby. I buy the formula, the diapers. I'm there to hold the baby when he cries.
Well, that paints Mr. Parker in the worst light. If he turns out to be the father, then he would have put his baby's mother through possibly the worst experience of her life. But Mr. Parker is adamant that the child isn't his. He hasn't even seen the baby one time.
I've had the same phone number for 4 years and he hasn't called me once.
And you claim he left you when you were 16 weeks pregnant?
He left me when I was 16 weeks pregnant, 10 days before Christmas, and 16 days before my birthday. He left me. He abandoned me. He left and he didn't look back.
Wow, that is cruel. There must be some reason or rationale behind this awful behavior, right? Something must be wrong here, right?
The last few days there, Your Honor, she told me that I wasn't worth nothing, that I was not allowed to eat, that I was not allowed to be a part of this family.
That's a lie. That's a lie. He wanted her to cook separate meals besides the meal meal that she cooked for the family. He wanted special food, and in these days and time, that is very hard.
I wasn't doing that. And he wanted me to take care of him, you know, like I was his mate.
That doesn't sound like a significant disagreement to abandon your 16-week-old pregnant wife for, is it? Should she even be cooking in such a condition? Doesn't seem like it. And Mr. Parker and Ms. Bailey are married. They are still married right now as they give their testimony. And Mr. Parker left over some cooking arrangements. I don't know about you, but that feels horrendous. But guess what? Mr. Parker has other much better reasons for leaving his pregnant wife.
This entire situation anyway, whether you left or you got ran out.
First it started, she'd start wearing makeup and everything. She was wearing it to church. It ain't so funny. She never wore makeup before. She started wearing it just to go to pay the bills, run out to go over, just to go see the neighbors. I didn't know if she was trying to get something going with the neighbors or not. Thing that really made me suspicious, Your Honor.
It turns out Ms. Bailey only did this because all the Christmas presents were in the room and she has an 8-year-old who might be messing around in there. But somehow, Mr. Parker believed that this was some evidence of infidelity. He believed that there could be some dirty photos in there. Incredible detective work, Mr. Parker.
I'm trying to understand, this is your marital home.
Ma'am, at this point, I was told to sleep in the living room floor and I was not to eat anything in the home. I was to go to work and bring money home, and that was it.
No, Your Honor, he wasn't. I was pregnant, and at this point, I hadn't trusted him since October.
It seems this marriage has a lot of tiny issues that eventually led up to the huge one where Mr. Parker walks out.
Okay, now take me back to that moment.
It was the 25th or the 26th. I called her up because it was the day the baby was supposed to have been born, left a message on her answering machine because she hadn't told us anything.
Did you accompany her to doctor's appointments?
No, Your Honor.
I was not allowed to, ma'am. I was told I was too annoying and I needed to stay home. At this point, I didn't know if it was...
Another thing that annoyed me, Parker, is that he wasn't on the birth certificate of the child, even though he is supposed to be on it automatically since he's married to Ms. Bailey. Ms. Bailey says she gave the hospital his name, but they refused to place it on the certificate because they knew they were having marital problems. This means the child isn't even bearing Mr. Parker's last name. Well, it's not too easy to blame Mr. Parker for denying paternity after all that. But you cannot really blame Ms. Bailey either, since Parker already abandoned her 16 weeks into the pregnancy. Let's hear from Mr. Parker's mother about this.
Before they separated, Your Honor, she had brought him to my mother's and dumped him out 2 or 3 times because she needed some time alone. And then she'd call him and want him to come back when it was payday. My son, they had one card that he bought. He met her and signed that card over to her so she would have a card for her and these children.
It seems like this marriage has too many issues. But weirdly, I don't think that infidelity is one of those issues. Let's see what the DNA test has to say about that.
Mr. Parker.
Yes, Your Honor.
You are his father.
I told you.
Told you.
We're going to finish paying the lawyer and file for custody.
I'm done with this. I'm done with this. I want to see the 2 parents in my chambers without their mother.
Ms. Bronson has always known that Mr. Roberts is her biological father, but extenuating circumstances have led her to paternity court today to prove paternity. This is because Mr. Roberts has suddenly gotten information that may prove that he isn't her father. Now, another man, Mr. Banks, is claiming that he is Ms. Bronson's father.
So, Ms. Bronson, how do you feel knowing your father is denying paternity?
Your Honor, I feel Mr. Roberts is my father. He's the only father I've known for 29 years. That's my father, period. I know him my whole life. He the only one I call my father. That's who I grew up known as my father. So Mr. Roberts is my biological father.
Mr. Roberts says he feels the same way about Ms. Bronson, and he's just recently found out about the doubts that may exist as regards Ms. Bronson's paternity. He's been her father for 29 years and has always taken responsibility for her and provided everything she needs. So where did this doubt come from?
What happened in 2009?
I had a phone conversation with my mother. Then she mentioned Mr. Banks, and she said, "Don't you remember the guy that I told you who thought he was your father?" When she said that to me, Your Honor, it was a what moment, like, what are you talking about? So she said that he wanted to get in contact with me. I think I gave her my number to give to him, or she gave me his number. I can't remember how we actually got in contact.
Wow, that must be traumatic. Getting told another man could be your father after 29 years of being with a different father is insane. Anyway, Ms. Bronson didn't tell Mr. Roberts about this. Instead, she told his fiancée, Ms. Blair, who is also in court today.
A few years ago, Miss Blair told me that she needed to talk to me about something, and that's when I found out. I was kept in the dark about all this. I never knew anything about Mr. Banks. I also, spent 8 months in jail for unpaid child support, and I'm $75,000 in arrears.
It would shake anyone who had to experience it. If it turns out Mr. Roberts isn't Ms. Bronson's father today, it would be an incomparable heartbreak for him.
Become aware that you potentially could be Ms. Bronson's biological father.
I can recall when she was about 6 or 7, and I ran into her mother and Jasmine and her sister in the park, and then she had told me that Jasmine was my daughter then.
On the other hand, Mr. Roberts only found out that he may not be Ms. Bronson's father when she was 19. Wow.
Did you think about that day for years?
Yes, I always thought that she was my daughter after the mother told me, because I even took her upstairs to meet my mother.
Oh, wait, so on this day when you all met at the park, then you took Jasmine, Ms. Bronson, upstairs to see your mother?
Yes, because she did it upstairs.
And you went upstairs and you said, Mom.
I just found out that Jasmine is my daughter.
That's a lot to take in, and Mr. Roberts didn't learn about any of this until much later. Ms. Bronson also doesn't remember this episode at all, and through all this, Mr. Roberts kept paying child support and was even locked up for missing child support payments.
So, Mr. Roberts, up until this point, you didn't even know Mr. Banks existed.
No,
you did nothing.
I knew nothing of Mr. Banks. I dated Miss Bronson. I even married her 2 months after Jasmine was born, and I went on my business as raising, as the start of my family. But possibility, if I'd known that earlier, it probably wouldn't have been.
Yes, Mr. Roberts, someone should have said something. The good news is we can get the test results right now and put this matter to bed forever. Let's see the DNA test.
Mr. Banks, you are the father. Do you want to be a part of her life?
Yes, I do. Because I love you, and I always will love you, as I told you before. Now, if I can walk down these stairs to give you a hug, if I may.
Will you allow that?
That's fine.